Βάλε λίγο την κάρτα τους. Γρηγόρη, βάλε την κάρτα του πάνελ. Γρηγόρη, την κάρτα του πάνελ βάλε. Μας έχεις, εντάξει.
Ναι, μωρέ, ναι. Okay, good.
Guys, here's the time. You can see what's going on. So, you can take a photo left and say that this is full before. If the conversation is not interesting, you can cut it in 1 hour.
Okay.
Do what you want.
Έγινε. Είμαστε ok. Αυτό το πάνελ θα γίνει στα αγγλικά, γιατί έχουμε ξένους συναδέλφους που είναι κοντά μας, οπότε θα γυρίσω τώρα στα αγγλικά. I'm just said that we'll do the panel in English so that everybody understands and so you understand, of course. We're not talking to ourselves. Okay, so welcome to this panel on the learnings from Glasgow, cop26. If we can start, μπορούμε να αρχίσουμε την παρουσίαση. Thank you. Okay. The COP26 took place in Glasgow, Scotland, after being postponed by 1 year because of the pandemic. It took place in October 31 until November 12. For nearly 2 weeks, world leaders and negotiators met to discuss and commit how to jointly address climate change. The world came with great expectations, especially after the COP21 in Paris in 2015, where an arrangement was reached to keep the rise in global average temperatures below 2 degrees, and ideally below 1.5 degrees centigrade, to avoid what scientists call even more extreme and more frequent weather events and destructive feedbacks that may put to danger human life and habitation and drive biodiversity loss on the planet. It's true that the final agreement in Glasgow was not ideal, but it mobilized nearly 200 countries to share a common vision, and now it's our part to start moving from words into action. We have 3 main goals. The first is to reach net zero by 2050 by lowering greenhouse gas emissions and decarbonizing our economies. The second is to drive climate resilient and climate adaptive development. And the third, to work together as a global community, industries and governments and communities, by breaking down silos and competitive barriers, and also protecting sensitive communities. We know the what, we need to figure out the how. The COP26 also hosted, okay, that's in Paris.
That's us.
You can see it here, I can see it here.
That's what's behind us.
Climate events that are going to become worse and more extreme.
Oops. That's not you.
Unfortunately, this is not working very well.
Oops.
We also have it here in Greece, by the way. It's not, you know, when Al Gore first showed his slideshow in 2006 and 2007 and 8, he was showing weather events in Katrina in the United States and the Pacific Ocean. Now we can be very, very proud to say that we have our own examples. We don't have to import, foreign examples. We have our own examples. These are fires in California, and of course, we have our own version of wildfires this summer and some years ago, which are incredibly destructive and incredibly bad for communities and people. Jesus. Okay, so during the COP26, also took place the Cities, Regions and Built Environment Day panel, which was a series of discussion by construction industry leaders sharing their solutions and actions in driving change in the industry. We heard about diversity of thought, about driving behavior change. We saw practical solutions and how the construction industry is shifting to net zero carbon. We heard about the need for closer collaboration between the industry and the government, and the need to bring everybody into the process, especially the communities that are affected by the construction activity in so many different ways. From the communities dealing with the industry mining of raw materials to the communities carrying the cost of living for heating their homes with rising energy prices, having to choose between very often between heat and eat. Today we have a very distinguished panel of architects who will share with us their own perspective of COP26 and the Cities, Regions and Built Environment Day panel and its likely impacts. Let's see some facts. The built environment is responsible for over 40% of climate emissions. This is roughly 13.6 billion tons of carbon every year. If I want to quote my mentor Al Gore, it's like we treat the atmosphere as an open sewer, changing it and accelerating global warming. Cities consume 70% of the world energy. And of course, as you know, by 2060, almost 70% of world population will be living in cities. So the cities and the buildings are very important factors in this. And as you know, 80% of the buildings that will be standing in 2050 are already existing, which means we have to do something about those buildings to meet the new needs of the future. And as it was quoted at COP26, demolishing an existing building and wasting their embedded energy will certainly not take us to zero energy targets. So the best strategy is to upgrade. And here I have to say that the Exekonomo program in Greece, which now it's going to its third cycle, it's definitely moving into the right direction. It's funding 65% of the cost of retrofit. It aims to retrofit about 60,000 homes, and a total of €500 million is invested in upgrades. And that's not only creating new jobs, but it's also supporting the economy and also supporting families that don't have the money to pay for heating and cooling. So we have to rethink. So we have to rethink about how we reuse materials. For example, concrete, right? We spoke about this in the previous panel a little bit. Concrete is a very energy-intense material, but also its ingredients, sand, when it's harvested illegally, it may create devastating effects on seaside communities. So what we're talking about is not theoretical, it's actual, it's real. So every specification we put on a project, it has an effect somewhere around the world. Each one of us will have to make a change, starting from little things and then going on to more complex decisions. We have to change the strategy, but we also have to change what we can easily change in our day-to-day, even practice. Here's about the sound. And so we have to categorize change, looking at the entire building process, from design education, professional design, specification, energy performance evaluation, design and certification, And here I would like to say that Greece can be proud that we have quite a large number of LEED certified buildings, which means that definitely the market is moving in that direction. And of course, we have to think of materials harvesting, manufacturing, transportation, construction, fabrication, the site management, and all this is really important. But what's also very important that we sometimes forget is the end user, okay? The end user is about 40% important in the success or a failure of a green building. If people are not partners to know how to use the building in a sustainable way, it doesn't matter if you have a LEED Platinum, the building will not perform as we aim to perform. And of course, the academic world and the young professionals are very important. And at Eco Week, we aim to change minds, and we have seen we've been in the forefront of raising awareness on climate change and sustainable design since 2005. We have invited experts and run professional workshops to educate and train young professionals. These are some of the people we've hosted at Eco Week. This is Robert Swan, the Antarctic crusader, and Al Gore in 2007. And we had Francis Kere and Kengo Kuma and many, many more people who have been very important in leading the sustainable design field. So we're inviting the experts and we're training young professionals, and we try to connect them to the real world. We try to teach them how to mine materials, what we call the urban mining, and to rethink about materials, to recycle, reuse materials, and also work on passive solar design, zero energy buildings, and really learn the future right now. And at Eco Week, we also identify the new minds and new voices in the industry, and we try to make our voices heard. We have a publication that came out in 2016. We have a new one coming out later this year. And we also have a series of podcasts which you are welcome to listen. They are an initiative with Vasilis Barzokas and Eco Week and ArchiSearch, of course. And we interview architecture and design personalities who share their experience and how they connect between design, sustainability, and innovation. And now I would like to give the floor to our guests. We have a rare opportunity to share today different perspectives from people who are coming from different parts of the world. Each one has a different angle in architecture, design, urban planning, sustainability. So first I would like to introduce our speakers, and then we'll start the discussion. The resumes are very long and very impressive, so I'll try to make it really short. Peter Murray, a legendary architect, curator of the New London Architecture Forum, pioneer of the London Festival of Architecture, and curator of some of the most important exhibitions of recent years. He's a chairman of many distinguished societies and associations. Peter has been appointed Officer of the Order of the British Empire, an OBE, in 2021 for services to leadership in the arts, architecture, city planning, design, and publication, and to charity. Peter is a prolific author and commentator on architecture and the built environment, has lectured widely, and we are very privileged to have Peter with us today. Peter, thank you for joining us. Michel Mosesian. Michel is an architect with degrees from École des Beaux-Arts, Cooper Union College, Cooper Union School of Architecture in New York, and Harvard, and the MIT Media Lab on Artificial Intelligence. He's a recipient of distinctions such as the Villa Medici or the Moore Fellowship. Michel has worked for important firms like the SOM in Chicago and London before establishing his own firm, Mosesian & Partners, and later Mosesian Architecture. He's a visiting professor at Imperial College in London. He focuses on architecture and well-being, innovation, and development in architecture. Michel, thank you for joining us, for being with us today. And we have also John Veikos. John is a graduate of Pratt Institute of Architecture and Cooper Union School of Architecture in New York, and he's the founder of the Praxis design firm. With over 30 years of experience in directing and managing production of architecture, John leads architecture worldwide with technical support and design leadership. John has worked with Michel Mosesian and Raymond Abraham, where he was involved in the design decision for the design vision for the Austrian Cultural Forum in New York. A skilled commentator, communicator, a negotiator, facilitator. It's our privilege to have John with us today in the discussion, and thank you, John, for joining us. A short introduction of myself. I'm Elias Messinas. I'm an architect, urban planner. I have a degree from Yale University and Athens Polytechnic, and I work in public participation, environmental consulting, and I teach sustainable design at tas3 University and Holon Institute of Technology in Israel. I'm really honored to moderate this distinguished panel today, and thank you all for joining us. We have about 55, 56 minutes. We would like to open the discussion to the floor, so get ready with ideas and questions. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to do this more participatory, so help us. You can keep your phone silenced. You may keep your phones because we may post the questions online. We'll see now how we'll technically do that. Without further ado, I would like to start with our first question to each one of our speakers. And since I introduced COP26, I would like to ask our speakers, where does COP26 find you? As an individual, but primarily as a professional. What did you take from the COP26 in general, and in the cities, regions, and Built Environment Day in particular? And what message do you wish to share with us, and especially the younger generation here in the room, and what message is driving your own behavior and professional practice? Shall we start with Peter?
Sure, thank you very much, Elias, and very pleased to be here at the Architect Show, and I'd like to congratulate the show. Really a fantastic atmosphere, fantastic attendance, and it's what we do at New London Architecture, which is about bringing people together to debate issues to do with architecture and the city. Our motto is bringing people together to help shape a better city, and that's really what we aim to do, and we collaborate together, as Elias was saying. That's really important in the current climate. And so we call ourselves New London because we want to see a new London, a London which is more sustainable, more just, and a better place to live. And that is what the new city is about. And we have a public face, which we have an exhibition with a large model showing people what changes are taking place in the city so that they can understand how that's affecting their lives. And we have a professional network which goes across all the various environmental disciplines, right away from politicians to engineers to architects to planners, as well as local communities. And so with our network for COP26, we brought together with the UK Green Building Council about 40 different organizations to deliver reports and thinking and discussion and debate in Glasgow. And so that was a very sort of fascinating 2 weeks to see how attitudes changed amongst a whole range of different players in Glasgow. It was, I think, I came away more encouraged than I went in terms of the sort of shifts of attitude that had taken place. And you asked what was my key takeaway, I think, was that the UK Green Building Council did actually produce a roadmap to 2050 as to what architects and what the environmental professions need to do to actually get to zero carbon for 2050, and indeed for a lot of buildings, how we get to zero carbon by 2030, which is almost a more difficult thing to do when 10 years in the built environment is really a very short time, taking into account design, planning, and construction. So I think what really interests me is how you create words into action, how you actually deliver all the good things that came out of COP and make them happen. So the Green Buildings Council's roadmap, the route to get there, talked about how you reduce both embodied and operational carbon. The two together have to be thought through. Mandatory measurements of whole life carbon, which is actually built into regulations, which at the moment our regulations in the UK they are better than they were a few years ago, but they still need to progress very fast in the face of a whole lot of other issues we have in terms of building regulations related to fire safety because of the tragic Grenfell Tower fire a few years ago, which has really had a major impact on the construction industry. Then we need to prioritize tax so that it encourages reuse. And we have a crazy system in the UK where we actually have to pay VAT on renovating buildings. We don't pay it on new building, but we pay it on renovating buildings, so that actually that's a discouragement to reuse, and that needs to change. Other wider issues were supported by the Green Building Council: carbon pricing, improving the efficiency of design and materials to actually deliver what the design brief is asking for. We see too many buildings which actually have very optimistic calculations of what energy use is going to be, and then actually when it comes to their performance, not so good. And as you mentioned, some of that is the way buildings are used, but also that is a matter of education and making the whole system so much more easier for people to really understand the real impact we're having. And I think one of the biggest issues that arose, and you mentioned it, the 80% of buildings which will still be around in 2050. So what do we do with housing particularly? Very difficult to actually improve the performance of housing in the UK. We have a very variable climate, and some parts of the UK get really cold. Houses need better insulating, but how do you actually insulate large numbers of houses with the disruption that makes to families, as well as the cost and whether the government is going to pay for it? How do you deliver those? It's something which neither the politicians nor the industry have really yet got to grips with, but is probably, I think, one of the most important, really, so that we need to actually there's a lot of debate at the moment in the UK that we're all moving away from gas boilers, which are an important part of heating, to other forms. Everyone's saying hydrogen, but nobody's even installed a hydrogen boiler in the house yet, which we're supposed to be starting implementing that by 2026. So there's an awful lot of progress to be made if we're going to do any of that. But I came away quite encouraged, really, by attitudes in COP. I met a lot of developers there who I think are really committed to the idea of creating long-term investments and better performing buildings. We still have issues of short-term development investment, which only wants to take the money and run. And so I'm not quite sure how we deal with that. But I think that there was generally a good feeling. For me, one of the worst days was the transport day, when they focused very much on electric cars only. Active travel was hardly mentioned until protesters actually forced it onto the agenda. And that, to me, reflected the power of the car lobby still to drive the agenda. And there are other players who needed to be heard. And I think that sort of pressure of big business could also be felt in the debate about cross-laminated mass timber, which is really, I think, a very important material which is going to change the footprint of a lot of buildings. But at the moment, the concrete lobby and the steel lobby tend to be more powerful than the timber lobby, and they had a bigger voice than they should have done, I think, at COP.
As goes also with the fossil fuel industry, which had the biggest delegation from all the
That's right. That's right.
Which is quite amazing. Michel, what do you take from COP?
I think I forgot the question, thanks to Peter.
Sorry, I did take too long.
I think he probably covered all the subjects we can talk about today. Well, I have to say that Peter has been a huge influence in the cityscape of London and beyond. He created NLA when I started my practice in 2005, I believe it is. And I've known Peter from his action on reshaping London from Chicago when I was part of the SOM design team, very busy with Canary Wharf and the City of London. So, and that goes back to the end of the 80s and 90s, where actually there was a kick that happened to the London scenery. Having Canary Wharf across from the city created an incredible emulation, stimulation of soon making the city of the world, bringing people. And when I moved to London in 2000, the GLA, which is the mayor's office, couldn't believe there were 3 to 4 million people like me coming like birds into the London scene. So the conjunction of the world and the animator like Peter and many others in London created an incredible place of debate out of a city that had history, parliament, democracy, everything in place, and public realm on private estates, making a place to show the world it was not just dust and English we don't understand. So I think that they changed the way they speak now. It's more clear. It's clearer, isn't it?
Speak more like Americans.
But when thank you, Vassilos, too, because seems that there's like parity in what Peter has done for London, and apparently there's a trend for this to happen again on that model in Athens, and I hope that will be fruitful. The question, I think I remember part of it, which was about the young people, and I hope there are young people. Like I'm completely flashed by these projectors, but the COP26, it's a great subject, and as she said, it's been perceived, as blah blah blah, right? Isn't like Greta saying we heard enough? And I think there's two subjects that we can talk again and again and check on how well we're doing. Is the one that we've been traumatically going through in the last 2 years, which is an invisible presence, and the other one, which is also made of invisible particles polluting our airs, waters, and ocean, which is the COP26 and climate warming. And then, without talking about the other invisibility, which is threatening our public realm, our cities, which is terrorism. So we're surrounded by invisibilities, by things that we don't see, that we fear. That's enough to challenge our capacity to be together, our capacity to exchange, to meet, to engage, to work, to live, to play. And this is a real challenge for the years to come. And we're not here to, and I'm never going to give answers to a question like that. I think it's a collective one, but we should absolutely not forget that if we don't bring space and people to be together, and there's no space in a city to bring all of us into the definition of a collective vision, it's going to be the victory of terror, of those invisible things. So to start, I will get back to the question probably later, and what I think our generation is capable of doing and not, and what the young generation should be doing and doing. So I will get back to that.
Okay. John.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Vasily, for hosting us and having us here. It's really a very nice event. I think what I got from COP was confusion. Yeah, I heard a lot of hope. I heard a lot of despair. I heard a lot of willingness to act. I heard a lot of resistance to not act. And for me, it's very hard to separate COP and COVID at this point. They sort of form this nexus. And it's curious how COVID, one of the things that has always been sort of this resistance against ecological thinking and sustainability is, oh, we can't do this, it's too expensive. We can't focus on that, or it's not possible. And COVID disproved a lot of assumptions for us, right? All the scientists in the world can't work on one thing. Sure they can. They did. You know, we can't stop the world. Well, we did. You can't print money. Well, we did. Yeah? So I think we need to reevaluate these barriers that we unnecessarily put in front of us that sort of maintain the status quo and stop us from thinking in a new way and accepting that normal isn't something that we necessarily want to sustain or that necessarily means anything. Yeah, normal is just a situation that's around you, and it's changing constantly and dynamically. There is no normal, right? We want to get back to normal. That doesn't mean anything, right? We want to be sustainable. Well, what are we sustaining exactly, right? Sustainability in its word means you want to maintain the current system. Well, that's not a good idea. That's how we got here, right? We need to reevaluate why and how we're doing things. Not only what we're building, but where we're bringing material from, how we're transporting things, what materials we're using to build things. Are we thinking long-term about them, or are we thinking short-term gains? I think there's still a lot of confusion and a bit of a cloud around what we need to focus on and what we need to do. And as long as that exists, the naysayers, the resistors, will always be able to push back against it. We need to evaluate what's important to us and what we want normal to be, not what normal is.
Correct. We'll get some of those issues. You're both raising issues that we'll discuss a little later. Each one of you is coming from a different background. If you can tell us through your work, how do you view the net zero challenge shaping in your work, and how does your work engage in climate change adaptation and mitigation? And I will start with Michelle, and maybe you can tell us a little bit also about your experience in teaching those things. How do you bring those things to your students or to younger generations?
No, I'm not going to tell you how it's going to affect it, because I hear that very much. The validation process of how we are used to produce the built environment. And I think there's a very strong level of sophistication to demonstrate that not only buildings got to lower their carbon emission, but in the way we produce them has to be also documented. That is like, maybe if the car industry and the aviation can have a level of traceability that is a matter of fact and